Admiral Sir William Cornwallis, GCB, was a Royal Navy officer. He was the brother of Charles Cornwallis, the first Marquess Cornwallis, British commander at the Siege of Yorktown. Cornwallis took part in a number of decisive battles, including the Siege of Louisbourg in 1758 and the Battle of the Saints, but is best known as a friend of Lord Nelson and as the commander-in-chief of the Channel Fleet during the Napoleonic Wars. He is depicted in the Horatio Hornblower novel, Hornblower and the Hotspur. Early life. William Cornwallis was born the 10th of February 1744. His father was Charles the 5th Baron and 1st Earl Cornwallis, and his mother was Elizabeth, daughter of Viscount Charles Townshend. William was the younger brother of General Charles Cornwallis. 7 Years' War. The young William entered the Navy in 1755 aboard the 80-gun HMS Newark, bound for North America in the fleet of Admiral Edward Boscawen. Cornwallis was shortly after exchanged into HMS Kingston and was present in her at the Siege of Louisbourg in 1758. The siege itself was one of the pivotal battles of the war. Louisbourg was the only deep-water harbor that the French controlled in North America, and with its capture it enabled the British to launch an attack on Quebec City. General James Wolfe's attack on Quebec City at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham saw the beginning of the end of French colonization in North America. When the Kingston returned to England in 1759, Cornwallis was taken aboard the 60-gun Dunkirk by Captain Robert Digby. During the planned French invasion of Britain in 1759, the Dunkirk was with Admiral Edward Hawke's squadron and took part in the Battle of Quiberon Bay against the French fleet under Admiral Conflans. The victory was part of what became known as Annus Mirabilis of 1759, and in concert with the other victories of that year gave the Royal Navy almost complete dominance over the oceans for over a century. The succession of victories led Horace Walpole to remark, "Our bells are worn threadbare ringing for victories." Cornwallis remained in the Dunkirk when she was assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet, then commanded by Admiral Charles Saunders. Dunkirk was detached on blockade duty, ensuring the French fleet remained in the city of Heraklion, Crete. Cornwallis moved to Saunders' flagship HMS Neptune, where he remained for little over a year. On the 5th of April 1761, Cornwallis passed his examination for lieutenant and was promoted into the newly commissioned third-rate HMS Thunderer. In July 1761, Cornwallis was with Thunderer and two other line-of battleships blockading Cadiz. Two French ships escaped the blockade and the British squadron set off in pursuit. Thunderer caught up with the 64-gun Achille and captured her in a single-ship action that lasted about half an hour. The British lost 17 killed and 113 wounded. In July 1762, Cornwallis received his first command in the 8-gun sloop of war HMS Wasp. In 1763, he was given command of the more powerful and newly launched 14-gun HMS Swift. He continued in her into the peace with France after the Treaty of Paris had ended the war in 1763. During the peace in 1765 he was promoted post-captain and given command of the 44-gun HMS Prince Edward. He commanded her until she was paid off and the ship was sold in 1766. In September of the same year he was given command of HMS Guadeloupe and was variously employed throughout the peace between the 7 Years' War and the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War. American Revolutionary War. When the French lent their official support to the American cause in 1778 with the Treaty of Alliance and the Treaty of Amity and Commerce, the war between Britain and the United States became a global war. Captain Cornwallis was in command the newly commissioned HMS Lion. The Lion was sent, with Admiral John Byron, to the West Indies. Battle of Granada. When war was officially declared, the Comte d'Estaing, the French naval commander in North America, swiftly captured the islands of St. Vincent and Grenada. Byron, on hearing the news that St. Vincent had been captured, assembled his forces, but on his way to recapture the island he received intelligence that d'Estaing and his fleet were in the process of capturing Grenada. Byron consequently took his fleet to Grenada in the hopes of engaging them and preventing the capture of Grenada. The island, however, had only held out for 2 days and was already in French hands. The Battle of Granada took place on the 6th of July 1779. D'Estaing saw the British fleet of 21 ships of the line approaching and weighed anchor. Byron gave chase and attempted to form line of battle as per the sailing and fighting instructions set down by Admiral Blake in 1653. D'Estaing, realizing that his force, although superior in guns, was not so in numbers, had ordered his captains not to engage directly but to bear away when British ships approached and to bear down on any individual ship that might, through wind or poor seamanship, become separated from the line. This tactic proved successful and D'Estaing's ships managed to escape the superior force, causing considerable damage to 3 of the British ships. Cornwallis's Lion was one of those ships, and when he became separated from the British fleet she was forced to break away and make a run for Jamaica. Rather than risk capture, Lion suffered a reported 21 killed and 30 wounded. Duty in the West Indies. During his time in the West Indies, Cornwallis came to own, then later free, the Doctress Cuba Cornwallis. Cuba became Cornwallis's mistress and housekeeper in Port Royal, Jamaica. Later she treated Cornwallis's friend, Captain Horatio Nelson, on his return from the disastrous mission to Nicaragua. She also treated Prince William Henry, later William IV, when he was stationed in the West Indies. Lion remained on the Jamaica station under the orders of Admiral Peter Parker, and when she was repaired began a series of cruises in the West Indies. On the 20th of April 1780, Cornwallis was in command of a small squadron of 2 line-of-battle ships, the Lion and HMS Bristol, and 1 large 44-gun frigate, HMS Janus. Off St. Domingue, the small British squadron discovered a convoy under the protection of 4 ships of the line and 1 frigate commanded by Monsieur de la Motte Pickett. The French chased and the British ran. The French outsailed the British ships and when in range opened fire. The chase continued throughout the night and into the morning of the 21st. The breeze died and the 2 squadrons began to repair their damage. When the wind blew once more, the chase renewed and continued throughout the night of the 21st into the 22nd. On the morning of the 22nd, 3 sails appeared to leeward. The arrival of these new sails would determine the outcome of the battle. The newcomers proved to be the 64-gun HMS Ruby, the 32-gun HMS Niger, and the 28-gun HMS Pomona. The French squadron bore away for Cap Français, leaving the 2 small British squadrons to repair and make for Jamaica. The British squadron under Cornwallis had lost 12 killed, including Captain Glover of the Janus. Cornwallis returned to England in the Lion in June 1781 and was appointed to command the 74-gun third-rate HMS Canada. He immediately returned to the West Indies under the orders of Admiral Samuel Hood, 1st Viscount Hood. Canada was with Hood's fleet at the Battle of St. Kitts in 1782. Hood took his 21 ships of the line and lured the French fleet of 29 ships of the line under the Comte de Grasse from its anchorage at Basse-Terre on St. Kitts and then sailed into the roadstead and anchored. Hood then repulsed de Grasse's efforts to dislodge the British fleet. The Battle of Brimstone Hill sealed the fate of the island despite Hood's efforts, and St. Kitts fell into French hands. With the island in enemy hands and the French fleet cruising off the harbour, Hood was forced to withdraw and made his way to Antigua. The Canada in Commodore Edmund Affleck's division suffered 1 killed and 12 wounded. On the 22nd of March, Hood joined Admiral George Rodney's fleet in Barbados. Battle of the Saints between the 9th of April 1782 and the 12th of April 1782. Canada made up part of the fleet of Admiral Rodney at the Battle of the Saints. During the battle, Cornwallis and Canada were fourth in line on the starboard tack in the centre division between HMS Repulse and HMS St. Albans. Canada sustained 35 casualties in total, with 12 killed and the rest wounded. The outcome of the battle meant that the French and Spanish abandoned the planned invasion of Britain's most valuable Caribbean island, Jamaica. The battle, although a victory for the English, caused a great deal of controversy in later years that included Cornwallis's direct criticism in writing of Rodney. The final couplet of the poem, said to have been written in Cornwallis's own hand, reads, "Had a chief worthy Britain commanded our fleet, 25 good French ships had been laid at our feet." It appears that the criticisms of Admiral Hood and Cornwallis went unheard, and Rodney was created a baron and given a life pension of £2,000 per year. Cornwallis was sent home under Rear Admiral Thomas Graves with the convoy that included the captured French flagship Ville de Paris. A violent storm hit the convoy and the Ville de Paris sank along with several of the convoy and one of the escorts, HMS Centaur. The convoy and her escorts finally arrived at Portsmouth, and the Canada was paid off in October 1782. Home Service and Peace. In January 1783, Cornwallis was given command of HMS Ganges, and in March of the same year was moved to HM Yacht Charlotte. The American Revolutionary War between Britain and the Allied forces of America and France ended with Britain's defeat in September 1783 and the subsequent signing of the Treaty of Paris. With the peace came the downsizing of the Navy. Cornwallis, however, remained employed in command of the Royal Yacht until 1787. In 1787 he was briefly given command of HMS Robust before hoisting his broad pennant as Commodore in the 64-gun HMS Crown in October 1788, when he was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the East Indies Station. Third Anglo-Mysore War. In November 1791, Cornwallis ordered that French shipping be intercepted and searched for contraband. The British and French were not at war, but the French were openly aiding the Tipu Sultan in his war against the British. Cornwallis detached Captain Richard Strachan in HMS Phoenix to intercept the French frigate Resolu and 2 French merchant ships that were heading for the French-held port of Mangalore. The subsequent Battle of Tallicherry saw Phoenix capture and search all of the vessels. The local French commander was outraged and sent word back to France, but the French authorities were too busy with internal upheaval to pay the incident much notice. French Revolutionary Wars. Though the conflict with Tipu Sultan was over, the French Revolutionary Wars had only begun. Promoted to Rear Admiral on 1 February 1793, Cornwallis remained in the area and aided in the capture of Pondicherry, captaining his new flagship, the frigate HMS Minerva, and commanding a small flotilla of 3 East Indiamen, Triton, Princess Charlotte, and Calcutta. He left command of Pondicherry to Captain King and returned to England, docking at Spithead in August 1793. He was succeeded in command of the East Indies Station by Commodore Peter Rainier. In May 1794 he hoisted his flag aboard the 74-gun HMS Excellent and was promoted Vice Admiral of the Blue Squadron. In August he shifted his flag to the newer and larger 80-gun HMS Caesar, and then once more in December to the first-rate Royal Sovereign. Throughout this period he was in command of various divisions within the Channel Fleet. The Channel Fleet was responsible for preventing invasion from France and for the blockade of French Channel ports. First Battle of Granada on the 16th of June 1795, he was in command of a small squadron that sighted a much larger French fleet. The ensuing action became famously known as the Retreat of Cornwallis. Cornwallis was cruising near Brest with 5 ships of the line: the HMS Royal Sovereign, HMS Mars, HMS Triumph, HMS Brunswick, HMS Bellerophon, 2 frigates and 1 cutter, HMS Phaeton, HMS Pallas, HMS Kingfisher, when a French fleet of 12 sail of the line and 14 large frigates appeared, commanded by Admiral Villiers. The odds being very greatly against him, he was compelled to order a retreat, but 2 of his ships were slow and unweatherly and fell behind the rest. The van of the French fleet began to catch the 2 slower British ships. The rearmost ship, the Mars, was caught and suffered severely in her rigging and was in danger of being surrounded by the French. Witnessing this, Cornwallis turned his squadron around to support her. The French admiral made the assumption that Cornwallis must have sighted assistance beyond his own field of vision and had turned to engage the enemy, knowing that a superior force was nearby to come to the relief. The French admiral ordered his ships to disengage, and Cornwallis and his small squadron retreated in order. The action is remarkable evidence of the moral superiority which the victory of the glorious 1st of June, and the known efficiency of the British crews, had given to the Royal Navy. The reputation of Cornwallis was amplified, and the praise given him was no doubt the greater because he was personally very popular with officers and men. Court-martial in 1796. Cornwallis incurred a court-martial on the charge of refusing to obey an order from the Admiralty. He was practically acquitted. The substance of the case was that he demurred on the ground of health at being called upon to go to the West Indies in a small frigate, and without comfort. Command of the Channel Fleet. Cornwallis was promoted Admiral of the Blue Squadron in 1799 and held the Channel command for a short interval when Admiral Jervis fell ill in 1801. Cornwallis took command once more when Jervis stood down as commander and became First Lord of the Admiralty, between 1801 and 1804. During this time Cornwallis was in charge of protecting the coast of the United Kingdom as Napoleon was building a large invasion force. Following Lord Nelson's victory at Trafalgar, Cornwallis was removed from his post and Earl St. Vincent took his place. Honours and politics. In 1796, Cornwallis was promoted to Rear Admiral of Great Britain, the title becoming Rear Admiral of the United Kingdom after the Act of Union came into force in 1801, and then in 1814 he was promoted to Vice Admiral of the United Kingdom. His greatest honours might be considered to be his various nicknames among the sailors: Billy Go-Tight, as well as Billy Blue, Coachy, and Mr. Whip. Sailors appear to have only given nicknames to those commanders whom they liked. The various nicknames of Cornwallis seem to show that he was regarded with more of affection than reverence. Cornwallis was also made a Knighthood Cross of the Order of the Bath in 1815. Cornwallis served as Member of Parliament for Eye during the periods 1768 to 1774, 1782 to 1784, 1790 to 1800 and 1801 to 1807. He also served as MP for Portsmouth from 1782 to 1790. Later life. Cornwallis never married. In 1800 he leased and later purchased the Newlands estate in Milford-on-Sea in Hampshire. He was joined by his close friend and fellow naval officer Captain John Whitby and his wife Mary Anna Teresa Whitby. John Whitby died in 1806, but Mary and her infant daughter Teresa stayed on looking after Cornwallis into his old age. On Sir William Cornwallis's death in 1819, Mary Whitby and her daughter inherited his fortune. Bibliography. The Naval History of Great Britain from the declaration of war by France in February 1793 to the accession of George IV in January 1820, with an account of the origin and progressive increase of the British Navy. 5 volumes, new edition in 6 volumes, and an account of the Burmese War and the Battle of Navarino. Semicolon, 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 semicolon. The Naval Chronicle. 05. Bunny and Amp Gold. The Naval Chronicle. 06. Bunny and Amp Gold. The Naval Chronicle. 07. Bunny and Amp Gold. Ralph J. Naval Biography of Great Britain, Volume 1. Whitemore and Amp Fenn.